Association, and I'm delighted today to welcome Air Commodore Tony Keeling, who's the current Commandant of the RAF Air Cadets. Tony, hello, how are you?
Hi Del, yeah, great to see you. Bizarrely, watching the snowfall, which is a bit of a surprise at this time of year.
Yes, now I wonder when people might be watching this, because of course you and I are now talking in early December, and people could watch at any stage in the future. But yeah, what an interesting period of time it's been over the last year or so. We'll come back to that, but here we are, right in the middle of the snow in December.
Well, it's great to have something different to talk about, isn't it?
We'll come on to what you've done to keep yourself occupied during the lockdown as the minutes go by. Tony, thanks ever so much for joining us today. You've come into what is probably one of the busiest posts in the service. Before we go on to all of that, can you just give us an idea and a background for those that are watching of what it is that you've done that brings you up until this point in your service career, and then we'll dive back further after.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an Air Cadet turned Commandant of the RAF Air Cadets, which is great for the RAF Air Cadet family to see. But I started life as an RAF Halton apprentice, and there are many out there. I wear my cufflinks with pride because I am very proud of that start in life. It was brilliant. But as time went on, I commissioned as an engineer officer in the late 90s, and I've spent a lot of time at the front line. Predominantly with Tornado, and done the usual round of staff jobs in Air Command and the Ministry of Defence. And in recent years, I was Station Commander RAF Wittering, which was just brilliant fun through the Royal Air Force's centenary. And in my last role, I was Air Officer A4, so responsible for the Royal Air Force's operational engineering and logistics. And here I am now, having a great time with the RAF Air Cadets.
A horrible question to ask you from the outset, but out of all the jobs that you've done, apart from the current one, because that would be a very unfair question, apart from the current job, which would you say was the highlight?
It's a tricky question because I've had so many great opportunities and worked with so many great people, but I think the one that where I really learnt an awful lot about myself, and it gave me the confidence to kind of probably accelerate my career, was I was Officer Commanding Aircraft Maintenance Flight at Coningsby, which followed my Django tour. And that's where it all began to slot together. And I really began to see that as an engineer officer, I could make a difference, not only in terms of how we did our business, but with our people. And I learned a lot about myself there. I learned a lot about the service. And I guess that gave me a really good platform to then push through, get promoted not long after, and go on the journey that's taken me here today.
You said people there fairly quick smartish when you spoke about Coningsby. What is it that you took away from that tour as far as working with people? What did you learn from them?
So I think it was seeing how the organisation changed reasonably quickly once I managed to get hold of it and understand it. And recognising that the team didn't actually change that much in terms of personalities that were there, but it was about recognising the benefit of empowerment, the benefit of really listening to the experts in the team rather than letting stuff flow through the hierarchy, and letting people pursue the changes that they know are right but don't have a means of delivering them themselves. So in effect, you become the person that works for them, not the other way around, and you become the person that can unlock their potential. And so I think I learned there that you can pretty much achieve anything with a great team that's empowered and trusted and has got the right training and confidence in place to do what they need to do. And that's, I think, a really important lesson for all of us.
I think the people space will come back to as we talk about your current role, because I know that's it's a big challenge, and you've got, much as the association has, a volunteer cohort that you're dependent upon. So we'll come back to that, because I know it's key to more close to both of our hearts. You mentioned about learning something about yourself as well in that role at Coningsby. Would you want to give anything away about what you might have learned about yourself?
It's a bit of self-belief, actually, and recognising that we've been through great training that the Royal Air Force provides us, and that's at every level. That's from going and doing my corporal's courses, going through officer training and engineer training, and then the courses that you pick up as you go through. They're all brilliant, and they're all about piecing together that jigsaw that means you've got a golf bag of clubs to deploy at the right time. but also you've got a framework in which to situate your problem solving, and then the self-belief that actually your intuition is right and it's worth pursuing. And that all came together for me there. And we turned around from a hangar that got its doors shut and was delivering aircraft late to one that was overproducing, bringing aircraft in from the front line to rectify that was beyond the capacity of the front line, and also disappearing off to the Middle East and the Falklands to go and do maintenance in the deployed space. And we did that with no extra money, no extra kit. We just did it with the potential of our people. And so drawing faith that you can make the right decision and you can have a positive effect on people, and then making sure that that sticks with you as you go forward was really important.
How did you find the lessons learned in that environment, if you like? How useful were they when you took up command at Wittering as the station commander?
So I think we gather little snippets from everybody as we go along, whether it's people, whether it's our peers, whether it's those people that we work for. And of course, invariably, when you're on a tour on a frontline station, you'll see 2 station commanders, you'll see 2 OCNGs and 2 OC admins, and you'll see a variety of squadron bosses. And you kind of take the good and park the not so good from that as you go along. And of course, you get pushed into different contexts and different opportunities as you go along, and that gives you a really firm bedrock on which to step into an environment such as Wittering, where I was quite comfortable with what happens in the engineering space. I had a good sense of how logistics worked. I was reasonably confident actually in running an airfield, which engineers don't normally do. In the past, airfields tend to be run by aircrew, but having worked within the regulator in the past and spent a lot of time in the safety space, I knew, I had a sense of what a right decision was and what a safe decision was. But there's a whole bunch of aspects that come from having the breadth of people. With a large diaspora, actually, we had a presence on every continent and a presence on 7 units up and down the country, and a hard operational focus on our people. That you start reaching into parts of the machine that you aren't comfortable with. A lot of that sits in the HR space, the security space, the infrastructure space, stuff that you don't normally touch on in previous roles. But you have a confidence to take information from your experts and turn those into sensible decisions for the benefit of the organisation and the people that work within it. And that only comes from I guess many years of experience in working in a variety of environments with inevitably, as it is in our organisation, as you'll all recognise, talented people.
So talented people. I think that's a lovely link to what brings you that brings us across to where you are now as the Commandant of the RAF Air Cadets. So I think you took up the post a few months ago, back in early autumn.
Yeah, so 21st of September was first day in school. So yeah, I'm kind of into my 3rd month now, and yeah, fascinating.
So no excuses for getting it wrong then, if you've been there for your 100-day period.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
A loaded question, really, as an ex-air cadet and somebody who's hit starred rank, having come through every level of the service. How did you feel when you were appointed into that role?
So a number of feelings, because of course these days you have to apply for a job and then get interviewed. So it wasn't another posting, and unusually for 1-star command appointments in the Air Force, I had to resign from regular service and join the reserve, which after 33 years in uniform took some thought. But equally, whilst I loved my job at High Wycombe, it was brilliant. The span of responsibility and the insights that I had from running, frontline engineering and logistics for the Air Force was just brilliant. It meant I was away from home. We'd finally put our feet down as a family. Kids are at university now, so my wife was home alone during the week, and I was living in a barrack block at High Wycombe, and increasingly that was not good for me and my mental health, and it was not good for us. So I made the difficult decision that I needed a change, and I was absolutely blessed when I saw this opportunity arise, and I was able to apply and compete for it. And what attracted it to me was, yes, I was an air cadet back in the 80s, and I remember the moment on a summer camp with the Air Cadets when I was inspired to apply to join the Air Force as an apprentice. And we can come back to that if you want, but we've all had one of those catalytical moments. But equally, Wittering gave me particularly a chance to grow what I'd always done, particularly since I've been commissioned, and that was support young people in my own small way. So at Coningsby, for example, I ran the neighbourhood engineers on behalf of the station there, and that's what first took me into schools and supporting what we recognise today as STEM, science, technology, engineering and maths. Wasn't necessarily called that back then. But at Wittering, we turned that into a really big programme of residential camps for uniformed youth organisations. We hosted the Race to the Line national final, which was a STEM event where schools across the country, I think 66,000 children participated in that, building their own little rocket cars. And we hosted the final, so we had about 350 young people at Wittering, designing and building their cars, racing them in front of royalty, with the red arrows putting on an air display. You know, as STEM events go, it was brilliant. And we also connected with organisations like the John Eggin Trust and helped them and their work with disadvantaged kids and how we can use the resources at our disposal and the talent at our disposal to provide them with some inspiration to improve their lot in life. So to see all of those pieces and actually to have, you know, air cadets on the station pretty routinely because of the nature of the station and our location, and to be always out with the dogs saying hello and asking what they were up to, it felt like too good an opportunity to miss, to be honest.
And how long will your tenure be? Are you aware of how long?
Yeah, so I'm on a 5-year contract. That's kind of how life works in the full-time reserve these days. So that takes me through to 55, and you know, I don't see this as people have perhaps pejoratively done in the past. I don't see joining the reserve as the end of my career. Certainly the Royal Air Force is beginning to talk about zigzag careers and how you can flow between different terms and conditions of service. And clearly I wouldn't have worn this uniform for 33 years if I didn't enjoy being part of the organisation and didn't have a deep love and respect for the organisation I work for. So who knows what the future will bring. It might well be I get a contract extension in this job. It might well be I look for other opportunities either within the Royal Air Force or the Ministry of Defence. But it's unusual really to have a 5-year appointment in any job in the Royal Air Force. And for me, that feels like a real opportunity to not only initiate change, but deliver that change and see the benefit of it.
And that perhaps again brings me neatly on to a key question I was going to ask you, if I can be this bold. And I know you won't want to give too much away given the early days, but you've got 5 years. What are you going to do over those 5 years? What are the priorities? So,
I mean, the Air Cadets is a brilliant organisation, and the offer that it provides young people today is superb. You know, we provide great sporting opportunities, and largely for a cohort that don't get the opportunity to do competitive sport at school because they're not the best sporting children. So we do competitive sport. You know, there's the flying and gliding offer, which is our unique selling point. We have a curriculum that leads to the award of a BTEC level 2, which is great. It means external agencies have come in and seen what we do. And of course, you'll see the adventurous training, the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, the drill and ceremonial, and the music that we do. It's all fantastic. But I'm also conscious that the Royal Air Force is on a significant journey of change at the moment under the Astra programme. And, you know, that's described as looking forward to 2035 and beyond, and making sure that the next generation Air Force is efficient, effective, fit for purpose, and actually battle winning. And so whilst the arrival of the F-35 was, you know, heralded as the introduction of a 5th generation fighter, actually a lot of what it plugged into wasn't next generation. You know, that, for example, technician training, which I was responsible for in some sense in my last job, looked a lot like the technician training I did as an apprentice in the 80s. Now, for something like an F-35, there's a question of whether that's still relevant and whether we need to change it. And actually what the Royal Air Force is doing with CAS's vision and how that's being deployed by the 3 stars and very many people across the organisation now, is to turn that on its head. You know, what are the infrastructure requirements that we need to best support the capabilities we'll have in service in the future? What's our journey into space and cyber? And you'll have seen some financial announcements around that recently. Do we need 68 branches and trades? Do we need to modernise how the professions are employed to deliver our capabilities? What are our terms and conditions of service? What are our rank structures? What are, you know, we've all moved a significant distance this year because of lockdown into digital ways of working. So how do we preserve that and accelerate that and really modernise what we do? And so the Air Force is on a huge journey, and actually at the heart of that is people and empowerment and giving people a voice and unlocking talent to deliver innovation. And I have a sense that we need to be part of that journey as the RAF Air Cadets. We need to think about what do we look like in 2035 and beyond, and how do we modernise our offer, particularly our academic offer, to respect the fact that aerospace is increasingly being looking like air and space in this country, and industry is changing. And actually, we're seeing an acceleration in technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, additive manufacture, sustainable aviation is something that we're all talking about. And space is becoming increasingly important to the nation and to the Royal Air Force. How do I make sure that the Royal Air Force Air Cadets are part of that and that we're relevant, and that the cadets that we're privileged to have amongst us, in giving them the best start in life, we give them we make them really attractive to employers today and in the future. So it's not change for change's sake. I think it's one of those moments where we really need to look at the context that we're in and the environment that we're in and where our parent service is going, and make sure that we hold on tight and we take our own active part in that journey as well.
The laydown of the Corps as a whole is, and we've discussed privately separately, not dissimilar to the RAF Association. Of course, the links between the two organisations, and in fact, on behalf of the association, thank you for what the RAF Air Cadets do to support us. Couldn't operate without them, and thank you everybody if you're connected at home. We have 336 branches at the moment, distributed all over the place. And without the volunteers that run our branches, and it is the volunteers that run the association ultimately, we would be in a real pickle. How does that translate across to the Corps as a whole?
Oh, fully translates across. So we're a little bit bigger. So we've got over 900 air training corps squadrons in the community, and we've got 260 odd CCF, so Combined Cadet Force RAF contingents in the school setting, and they're brought, and between them there's give or take 45,000 cadets out there today, which is just superb. That's all brought to life by around about 15,000 volunteers and less than 300 permanent staff. So we describe our adult volunteers, if you like, as our centre of gravity. We can have the best programme available with the best content and the best resource, but without the adult volunteers to bring it to life and deliver it to the cadets, it's nothing. And actually, I'm really grateful for their gift of time and their gift of talent, to give the considerable amount of time that they do to a youth organisation is absolutely brilliant. And it is a demanding volunteer role, commanding squadrons, participating in squadrons and working in the wings. It's hugely impressive, and there are people out there that dedicate their lives to the Royal Air Force Air Cadets. It's absolutely amazing. We've got volunteers that I've met recently with over 50 years of voluntary service towards the RAF Air Cadets. It's superb. So I'm hugely respectful of what they do, but I'm also conscious that I need to maximise the benefit that we get from the gift of time and talent that they've got. And part of my role is to understand where we remove that burden, where we can modernise our training offer, and the way we connect with them so that they spend more times doing what they really enjoy, which is contact with cadets and delivering all of the great activities rather than administering that. There's a real challenge for us there. But yeah, they're a superb collection of people, and we couldn't do it without them.
Now, we find ourselves now in the second lockdown, and the commitment of the volunteers, I think, is something, certainly from our branch perspective, has just been stunning to watch. And I understand it's the same amongst the RAF Air Cadet contingent. How have squadrons been able to cope with COVID-19 and lockdown parading, for example? It's
been really difficult, as you can imagine, and complicated, I think it's fair to say, by a subtly differing approach in the devolved administrations, and you'll have seen that yourself, given your footprint. But the response has been superb, although I'm seeing some fatigue now, as you'd expect, with a couple of weeks to go before Christmas. So we went from a situation of the whole organisation parading face-to-face and doing everything that it normally does to a complete shutdown overnight, back in, where was it, 21st of March, something like that. And the way the organisation responded and migrated all of their activity to virtual platforms and started doing virtual parade nights and started adjusting training courses so that they could be delivered remotely, both to cadets and to volunteers, has been superb. And we've gone from zero to, at last count, well over 20,000 virtual parade nights in this short period of time. Now, I'm also conscious that people have worked really hard to make this happen, and keeping squadrons connected and alive and flourishing is really, really difficult in this context. And we couldn't have done this without the volunteers really pulling out all the stops to make it happen. But it doesn't mean that there's been the whole organisation's been able to participate. You know, if you're in a family with 3 or 4 children that aren't blessed with being able to afford a laptop each and all the rest of it, then it's really difficult to connect. So we need to preserve the good out of this. There's some digital ways of working that we really need to look after. But we're absolutely certain that for the well-being and benefit to mental health of young people and our volunteers, we need to get back to face-to-face parading as quickly as possible and start bringing back to life all of that stuff that the camaraderie, the activities, and all the stuff that makes the RAF Air Cadets the organisation that it is. And you know, between lockdowns, we had a really good process in place, informed by the National Youth Agency that functions on behalf of all of the youth organisations. And we sit in a collective with all of the uniformed youth organisations to make sure that we're operating coherently and collectively. So we've had a consistent approach to how we respond, that the rules are fairly tight. But we're in a position between lockdowns where we managed to get 25% of our ATC squadrons back to parading face-to-face, for them only to stop again. We're in a position today where it's about 5%, but lots in the stocks ready to go. And probably about half of our CCFRF contingents are parading. They're in the school setting, so on one hand it's a little easier, and the support of school principals and school governors and teaching staff to make that happen is absolutely brilliant. But equally, we recognise that there's been some significant impact on education throughout this period, and curriculum needs to come first. But I suspect come the new year, and once we've been through, I think we're all a little bit nervous about the 5 days relaxation in the middle of Christmas and the consequence of that. But I think come mid-January, hopefully we'll see an acceleration of that return to face-to-face. And with hopefully with the vaccine coming, it will allow us to deliver something that looks a little bit more normal, and we can get our young people back in a cockpit, back on the hillsides, back on the parade square, and doing the stuff that they enjoy doing, because it's hugely important at the back end of a really, really, really difficult year. You have, as an organisation, an important anniversary that I'm sure you'll
you'll relay in a second next year. What sort of opportunities do you think you're going to have large scale events perhaps next year, or is that something that just simply won't take place?
So yeah, thanks for the opportunity to plug. So yeah, next year is our 80th anniversary, and we are thinking very carefully about what we do. The organisation celebrated in spectacular style its 75th anniversary and participated fulsomely in the Royal Air Force's centenary in 2018. But we sense we need to be cautious, and there is a risk that we put a lot of effort and a lot of planning and maybe a lot of money into planning events that will get tripped up because the future is still uncertain to some extent as we go forward. And actually, I think given the year we've had, we really need to put our energy into delivering a normal year as possible for our cadets so they can go and do what they need to do, because they've been denied every opportunity this year. So I think we're planning on carefully branding and making sure that when we do get out and about and we do our national level events, whether that's sports or drill, we brand it accordingly, and equally whatever presence we're able to have at the Royal International Air Tattoo at Fairford next year, assuming that the show is able to go ahead, we'll carefully brand that as well. But I think our focus needs to be on sustaining the size and shape of the organisation next year, really understanding what harm COVID has done to the organisation. You know, how many people have we lost that we wouldn't have ordinarily? And I mean that by people have decided to pursue other things, or things have happened in their lives that means that they can't commit to volunteering as much as they would have liked to in the past, and you'll see that in your own organisation. And how do we rebuild to the position where in 2022 and beyond we can start really growing and flourishing again? So as much as we'd like to have a song and a dance, if you like, around our 80th, I think actually our energy is better spent on focusing on giving our cadets as normal year as possible, and we will carefully and cautiously mark our 80th in the background.
I'm sure, and again, I have my tongue in my cheek here, but I know that you'll be going out to visit squadrons, and apart from visiting 229 Farnham Squadron, which was the best squadron in the Corps from this particular ex-cadet, which is the second best squadron that you're going to be visiting?
So my first virtual parade night was with 145 Squadron Altrincham and Hale, which was the start of my life in a light blue uniform. And actually, it was a real pleasure to dial in and see them all, because the squadron commander, a lady called Squadron Leader Jo Ryan, was a cadet with me, and so that was quite special to be able to dial in and spend a really good evening of. We chatted about my journey from Air Cadet to Air Commodore, and we also chatted about the squadron successes and achievements, and we had a really good Q&A session. So. Yeah, special place in my heart for 145.
I'm assuming that Joe, I think you said, wasn't it, the squadron boss there? Joe's got you on speed dial now, and that's probably the most useful contact that she'll ever have.
Well, she keeps threatening to brand my office. We've had some banter about. I mean, I'm sure many of your members will remember the film Spaceballs with Mel Brooks, where they branded everything. And I have a vision of 145 doing a kind of Spaceballs branding of my office, but they've not quite risen to the challenge yet. So if they're listening, I'm still waiting.
That sounds like the gauntlet's been thrown down for 145. Is that gauntlet down again? I've got no doubt that there will be lots of squadrons that will be watching this. Does that gauntlet get thrown down for other squadrons as well, or is it just a personal invitation?
You know as well as I do, our squadrons run on a charitable structure in the main, and we publicly fund as best we can the activities that they do. So that gauntlet's a bit tongue-in-cheek. I'd rather they spend their time and money investing on the best possible opportunities for the cadets that they've got under their charge than worrying about me.
I'm sure they'll leave you alone and in dignity. Now you mentioned opportunities there, and let's just steer away from the day job for a second, Tony FMA. Mm-hmm. What an interesting period we've had for what now represents the last 9 or 10 months, really. What opportunities has that brought you personally? Have you learned anything, taken up any hobbies that you didn't do before lockdown came your way?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because of course when we locked down, I was still AOA 4 and linking through to Air Officer Commanding 38 Group and High Wycombe, and actually the swift move to our fully digital ways of working for all of us was a bit of a thrashing, if I'm honest. When we started, it's kind of normalised now, and everyone's settled down into a more useful rhythm. But back-to-back Skype meetings wasn't great for the bladder or the coffee intake, I must say. So we've learned that. But of course, I then retired from my regular commission and joined the reserves and moved into this job. And of course, early on, like it is in any job, there's a degree of immersing yourself to understand the organisation, which has been quite a challenge from my keyboard. And firstly, in forming relationships with my own team, and secondly, in really understanding the character and the culture of the organisation when they're all performing digitally as well. So I think more to do next year on that. But in terms, for me, it's been a real good opportunity to sort out my fitness and my diet and do all of those things that tend to drift, particularly when you're living in the mess midweek. I've really enjoyed getting back into the kitchen. And I think my real success this year is I've finally learned how to make a good onion bhaji. I'm very proud of that, particularly as our local takeaways fall a little bit short now, so that's good. And we're in our own home finally, and you can see from behind me that the height of the ceiling kind of belies the age of this property. So to have been able to get back on the tools, finally do some decorating that doesn't involve magnolia and wood chip as it does do in a Mary Quarter, and get out into my garden and for the first time ever grow my own produce has been hugely rewarding, actually. So in terms of the reset of lifestyle that I needed to look after me and also to make sure that Bobby and I were in a good and healthy marriage and properly connected with our kids who have had a difficult time as university students, as you probably recognise. It's the journey that I've been on this year has been absolutely invaluable, and I feel as though, despite the difficulties, I'm coming out of the year in better order than I came into it. I think, and that's because I've managed to address that thing that we all talk about, work-life balance, and we talk about it in trite terms. I've been gifted an opportunity to be able to do something positive about that, and I have. And it does mean, particularly in this job, we're really looking forward to next year, the ability to go and do those national events with cadets, but do that as a family. Bobby and I will go. We'll take the dogs, and we'll go and immerse ourselves into. What's not to enjoy about seeing young people enjoying themselves and succeeding? I'm looking forward to a really uplifting year ahead.
I think that's a really, really apt place for us to possibly draw stumps, and you end on the subject of youth there, which I know is very close to your heart. And before our final words will come to you, but on behalf of everybody, Tony, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been great to see you again. I look forward to seeing you again in person. But the final words would be yours, and I wonder whether you wanted to give any message out to the RAF Air Cadet community as a whole.
Well, I guess to the RAF Air Cadet community, but also the broader Royal Air Force family, which of course includes the Royal Air Forces Association. It has been a really difficult year, and we're coming towards the end of it, but we're not quite out of the woods yet. And I'm conscious that everybody has got their own experience and their own story to tell of this year. And the nature of the year is that absolutely everybody has been affected, and it will have affected them in many different ways, whether that's educationally, whether your income's been affected, whether those close to you have suffered through ill health or worse. Incomes have changed. the outcomes this year have been many and wide ranging, and very few of them are good. And I do feel a little bit conscious of the fact that I've been blessed with an opportunity for a reset. But equally, you know, my wife's employment was a challenge through that as well. So I would say, as you end the year and look forward to a much more positive and normal, but in a different sense that we're yet to understand, 2021, that you just reach out to friends and colleagues and family members, particularly those people that you don't routinely see, and just check that they're okay. And equally, if you're not okay, be unafraid to let your friends and colleagues and your family know that you're not okay, because this year, more than any other, we need to be there for each other, and we need to be strong and supportive and have our eyes and ears open, because there will be some cracks out there, and we need to be there ready to catch people. And that's precisely, you know, why the Royal Air Force Association exists, and why we have such a strong Royal Air Force family, because at the end of the day, we're all there for each other. So I guess my plea is, as we come into this festive period, just reach out, offer that hand of support and that shoulder of friendship, and be there for each other.
I think be there for each other is a great way to end. I'm going to raise my coffee mug to you. I have an association mug here. I'm sure you've got something similar. I'm
still drinking from my RAF 100 mug. Very proud of it.
Wonderful. RAF 100. Excellent. Tony, thank you very much for joining us today on behalf of everybody, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
It's been a pleasure, Dale. Thank you.
Take care of yourself. Thanks, Tony.
Yes.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.